Hello friends, it is Stasia and welcome back to my channel. So today we will be doing my June wrap up. I actually had a very good month, so I'm very excited to get into it. First and foremost, I will share my book mail. I did not buy anything this month, so the books that I'm going to share with you were all gifted to me in some way, and there are 4 of them. So the first one I got was Shot Taker by Piper Lawson. I actually read this in the month of June, so I will be back with thoughts on this. The next one I got was Sinful Hearts by Jagger Cole. This is supposedly an opposite attract, enemies to lover mafia sort of vibe, so excited for this one. Then, because I reached 1K, my bestie actually sent me Regretting You by Colleen Hoover. Have not read it yet, so I have no idea what it's about, but I'm excited and happy to add another Colleen Hoover to my collection. And then the last one I got is a cozy mystery that came out earlier in June, but I got it late, so I wasn't able to read it in time. But that was Death Comes to Marlowe by Robert Thorogood. So yeah, so those were the 4 books that I accumulated this month. Now we're gonna go into some quick stats. So in the month of June, I ended up reading 13 books, which came out to 3,964 pages, which is actually really good. The month before, in May, I also read 13 books, but my page count was higher. So May still remains to be my best month of reading. And then for genres, with no surprise, I read 12 romance and only 1 was like a mystery thriller. And then as for my format, I read 9 ebooks, 3 physical books, and then 1 was like an audio book, but also physical. Yeah, so those are the stats. Now we'll go ahead and get into the books. So the first book I read was Tattered Stars by Catherine Cowles, and I gave this one 5 stars. So this book follows Everly and Hayes. Everly's family did something really bad, which kind of blew up in their faces and also heavily affected Hayes' family as well. So after their life blows up, Everly moves away, and it is now many years later and Everly is back in this small town, and Hayes is not happy about it. He definitely wants her to leave. He looks at her as like a reminder of this trauma that they endured. So he's not happy that she's back in town, and he does make that very, very well known. And this book, I had no idea what it was about going in. I just seen that the series and the author as a whole was, you know, very popular on Bookstagram and BookTube. So I just kind of dove in without knowing anything, and it was a lot more than I thought was going to be. I thought it was just going to be like a fun little small town romance. This book is very hard hitting. There's a lot to unpack for both of the characters, so definitely look up the trigger warnings if you think you might need to. But it basically just follows Everly and Hayes as Hayes kind of learns to grow and forgive himself of things that happened, and Everly is trying to move on after this entire thing with her family has happened, and it's many years later, but she still has like a lot of feelings towards it that she needs to work through, especially being back in the small town. So like I said, I gave it 5 stars. I loved the like rawness of Hayes and Everly's feelings, because I don't know if the synopsis says it, so I don't want to say like what this past trauma was, but because the trauma was so like hard hitting, and both Everly and Hayes were pretty young when it happened, just seeing how it made and like shaped them as they grew up, and seeing how it stuck with them even after all this time was honestly, it was just like so raw, and you really felt for the characters. You want Hayes to kind of have that peace with the situation so that he can kind of like move on a little bit, but you also get to see Hayes' point of view and like why this hurts him so much. But eventually, obviously, it is a romance, so they do find common ground, and Hayes realizes that maybe his feelings towards Everly were very misleading, and I loved seeing them unpack that. I loved seeing them both start to open up and realize that maybe there can be some sort of relationship, some sort of trust there with each other. I just loved to see them slowly soften for each other, especially given the past that their families have together. I just thought it was just well done, where the situation and the past wasn't disrespected, but these characters were also able to grow together from the situation that did happen. The next two books are novellas, so not much to say here, but the first one was Under One Roof by Ali Hazelwood, which I gave 5 stars, and then I read Stuck With You, also by Ali Hazelwood, which I gave 4 stars. Under One Roof basically follows Mara and Liam. Mara's like favorite teacher or whatever passes away, and that is Liam's aunt, I believe, but she leaves Mara a letter saying that she's leaving her this house, but her nephew Liam still lives there. So when she shows up, Liam is very taken off guard, but they do decide that they need to live together because that was Mara's only option, and Liam was like, well, I mean, you have rights to the house, so I guess. So we basically just follow them, try to figure that out, and realize that they don't actually dislike each other, but they actually are quite fond of each other, so that was fun. And then Stuck With You follows Sadie and Eric. Sadie and Eric kind of had a moment together, and then after that, a whole lot of madness happened. Very big on miscommunication. So after everything kind of blew up with their companies, Sadie just kind of cuts Eric off and never talks to him again until they get stuck in an elevator and they're kind of forced to talk it out. So that was that. I enjoyed Mara and Liam's story a lot more. Although it was a novella, I feel like we kind of got everything that we needed. And with Stuck With You, I felt like the back and forth in timelines was necessary because you like needed to know what happened in order to know why they felt the way they felt. But I felt like it was just, the entire story existed because they didn't communicate with each other, and she kind of just cut him off. So that's fine, but it was a novella, so it was quick. The next book that I read, I have an entire vlog on, and that is Brutal Obsession by S. Massery. I ended up giving this book 4 stars. I love the tabs on this book. I'm not gonna go too in depth on my thoughts on it because, like I said, I have an entire reading vlog on it, but I will tell you a little bit about what the book is about. So this basically follows Violet and Grayson. In the beginning of the book, they get into a car accident where Grayson hits Violet and basically tries to flee the scene, but he doesn't get away too quickly because, so basically Grayson blames Violet for blowing up his life because after that entire situation happened, the press got a hold of it because his dad is like a senator or something like that. So his family name is pretty public. So he blamed Violet for ruining his life, ruining his like image, and having him be forced to move to a new school and start a new like hockey team and everything. Whereas Violet can blame Grayson for ending her dance career because in the accident she shattered her leg and was not able to dance again. So there's definitely animosity there. 6 months later, when Violet gets out of like rehab and everything, like trying to help her leg again, she and Grayson quickly find out that they now attend the same school. So Grayson is very focused on ruining Violet's life like he thinks she ruined his. So basically that's the plot line. This is very, 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 very big on a bully romance. So if bully romances are not for you, don't pick it up. the bullying is intense, so I will say that. But yeah, overall, I pretty much enjoyed it. Gave it 4 stars. You can watch my vlog if you want more thoughts, but that was this one. The next book I read was Bless Your Heart by Lyra Parrish, and this was a small town best friend's older brother romance, and I gave it 5 stars. This book follows Beckett and Summer. Beckett is Summer's best friend's older brother. She's been friends with them for ages, but there's always been like a little bit of tension there. They don't necessarily seem to get along or ever be on the same page about anything, but when a ranch opens up, Summer wants to buy it to open her bed and breakfast, whereas Beckett wants to buy it to kind of expand his land for his like company. He does like horseback riding classes and tours and stuff like that. So they find themselves in a face-off of who is going to end up getting this house and this land, and it kind of kicks off from there. There definitely is like that underlying tension of like, do you guys really dislike each other, or is there something else? And everyone sees it. Even Summer's best friend, she definitely like mentioned it. She's like, hey, you know, I think what you got going on with Beckett is something a little bit more than what you think it is. But yeah, so overall, 5 stars. Really, really loved it. It was such a like quick read, very fast paced. Beckett has like a group chat with all of his siblings, which I thought was just so entertaining because they were all kind of just getting on him for like being around Summer, or being like, hey, like who's gonna get the land sort of thing. But eventually they do come to an understanding. Obviously it is a romance, and things kind of kick off from there. And yeah, it was overall just really entertaining, and I really enjoyed it. The next book I read is a part of a vlog that should, emphasize on the should, be coming out in July, maybe in the middle of the month, but that is Not a Happy Family by Sherry Lapina. This is the one thriller that I read this month. So this book follows a bunch of siblings, the Merton siblings. So there's 3 kids and their parents. Essentially, this book starts off with all of the kids going to their parents' house for an Easter dinner, where the parents basically announce something really big. The next day, or like a few days later, their parents are murdered in their house, and now we're trying to figure out who did it. All the kids obviously have a motive to get more money, or whether or not there was something else going on. But yeah, so they all have a motive. It's told from like following all of the characters. So it was, I gave this book 5 stars. I actually really, really loved it. I thought this book was so entertaining. I loved the family drama. I love the fact that everyone did have a motive, and everything was like well thought out, in the sense that there were like lies, there were stories, there's like background that could have led everyone to this situation. There's also side characters with the like siblings' spouses, and then obviously the detective on the case. So like I said, I gave it 5 stars. I thought it was super entertaining. I loved the ending. I thought the ending was so well done. It was so much fun, honestly, down to the very last like sentence. I was just like, oh my gosh. I also felt like the epilogue added a lot. So overall, 5 stars. Really enjoyed. Very quick read. Like, I was thoroughly engaged throughout the entire book. The chapters are also super short, so it helped like jumping with the characters and stuff. But 5 stars. Really loved. The next book I read was 3 to Get Ready by Skye Warren. This is the 3rd and final book in the Hughes trilogy. And I can't really say too much because it would just spoil the rest of the series, since it is a direct series instead of like companions. But I will say that I gave this book 4 stars. It basically continues and concludes Finn and Ava's story. I gave it 4 stars because while I did enjoy how everything wrapped up, I loved the overall, like, where the story went and ended up. I do wish that we got a little bit more time with our characters together and maybe dove a bit deeper into their relationship together, because I felt like for a lot of the book they were kind of separated, working on the things that they needed to work on which is understandable why they were so focused on like their own things, but I wish we got a little bit more of them together. But yeah, there's that. The next book I read was Secret Puck by Rebecca Genshak. This is a friends with benefits, secret relationship, hockey, brothers, roommate vibe. And I gave this book 4 stars. I enjoyed it. So basically this book follows Heath and Ginny. Ginny is a freshman. She's just about to start college, and her brother goes to the same college. When she meets and runs into Heath, they quickly got some sparks flying, but Ginny just got out of a relationship, so she's not really looking for anything. She's just looking for some fun, hence where the friends with benefits sort of jump in. Obviously feelings do start to get exchanged, but Heath isn't sure how to deal with that, and Ginny is a bit scared to kind of jump into that again. So yeah, overall gave it 4 stars. I really loved Heath and Ginny. Like, I thought that they were such an unlikely pair, but Heath's patience and understanding with Ginny was just so heartwarming. I loved how protective he got with her, and how their relationship wasn't fully like physical. They did just hang out a lot. They had some conversations, which is why the miscommunication later in the book very much bugged me, because for a lot of the book they did talk about like their boundaries, what they expected. So when there was miscommunication in the end, obviously like the 3rd act conflict, I just kind of wish that didn't happen. I wish it went about in a different way, but I still loved the tension, because especially since it was like a secret, her brother didn't know. They were always in the same room at the same time, but couldn't do anything. So I loved the scenes like that. Overall, their chemistry was really great. I loved the friendships that Ginny made. I loved seeing Heath with the hockey team, so very fun. The next book I read was Someday by Willow Astor. This is the 2nd book in the Landmark Mountain series, and this follows Theo and Sophie. Theo and Sophie were best friends all throughout when they were younger, when they grew up, when they were in high school. Like, their friendship obviously led to a little bit more in high school. So Theo is very, very shocked when one day Sophie kind of just ups and leaves without many questions or answers, and it kind of just takes him by surprise. But he's unable to find her, unable to contact her, until like however many years later, Sophie is now back in Landmark, and Theo is upset because he feels betrayed by Sophie. But Sophie also is trying to explain and hopefully get Theo back as a friend, if not from where they left off. So I gave this book 5 stars. Oh my gosh, it was so heartbreaking and so sad. Sophie's story was so well done. The situation that made her run away was honestly great. Like, it wasn't like a cop-out. Like, she really just like needed to go. She didn't have time to tell Theo. She didn't have time to tell anyone. And I really felt bad for her. Like, she was dealing with so much and had no one to turn to. Theo obviously had his family, who also lost Sophie when she kind of just up and left, because Sophie was basically one of them at that point. But Theo, like, he just felt betrayed overall. But when she comes back, he obviously is mad at her for a good reason. But I'm glad, like, I was so happy to see his willingness to understand. Even though he was mad, he still also wanted to know that she was okay and wanted to know like what had happened. So the patience that he had with her as she was slowly able to open up and tell him about the past and tell him about the story, why she had to leave and all of this, I just loved it. I loved it so much. And Theo was so patient and so sweet, and I loved how much he was there and how much he wished that he could have been there for Sophie in the beginning. Sophie went through a lot. I was just so sad for her the entire time. Her story is so heartbreaking, so definitely look up trigger warnings if you need to. But overall, it was such a great book. Definitely recommend. The next book I finished was Shot Taker by Piper Lawson. This is the 2nd book in the King of the Court series. The first one is Game Changer, which I believe I read last month. But yeah, so this is book 2 and picks up basically exactly where book 1 left off, between Clay and Nova. So I gave this book 4 stars. Can't say too much without spoiling book 1, but overall I still really love the chemistry between the characters. I just felt like there should have been a bit more talking about what actually happened and like the past that these characters have. I wish we got to chat a little bit more about that, but I did enjoy it. I do still love these characters. The ending, while I kind of expected it, I was very, very sad when it happened. So I can't wait for the 3rd and final book to see how Nova and Clay's story wraps up. Yeah, I can't really tell you guys too much because it would spoil it, but definitely worth the read. I am really enjoying this series so far. I believe it's only 3 books. So the last book, I believe coming out in August or September, will wrap up the story of Nova and Clay. The next book, I also have a full-length vlog on, and that is Maggie Moves On by Lucy Score. This was the Mending Hearts book club pick, which I vlog every single month. So yeah, I give this book 4.5 stars. So I won't tell you too much about it, but I will tell you a little bit about the book. This book follows Maggie and Silas. Maggie is like a YouTube house flipping sort of girl, and Silas is a landscaper. So in this new small town in Idaho, she buys a house to renovate because that's just what she does. She renovates, she sells it, she moves on to a new house, that sort of vibe, until she meets Silas, the landscaper. She ends up hiring him, and from the beginning, Silas is completely hooked on Maggie. He's completely convinced that they're gonna get married, that they're gonna fall in love, and Maggie's just like, we're not gonna do that because I don't stick around. Like, I just flip these houses for other people and I go on my merry way. So this book just follows Maggie and Silas and exploring that. Also Kevin, which is Silas's dog. There's also a great like representation of found family in this book, which I wasn't expecting but was absolutely living for. I loved the house renovation part. There's also like a subplot of a mystery, which is pretty interesting. So like I said, gave it 4.5 stars. You can check out my vlog if you would like more thoughts. Alright guys, 2 more books. The next book I read was Absinthe by Winter Renshaw. This is a forbidden romance between a student and a principal, but both parties are over 18. So basically this follows Ford and Houston. They meet on an anonymous dating app, so they actually don't know who the other is, but they form a connection, they talk, one thing leads to another. They never meet, they only talk like on the phone or things like that. When Houston starts her new school and gets called into the principal's office, she quickly realizes that it is Ford, and Ford realizes that the student standing in front of him is the girl he was talking to all summer. I ended up giving this book 3.5 stars. I enjoyed it. I expected more forbidden element, and then there was a whole bunch of like time jumps that I didn't really feel like was necessary. I understood why it happened so that there could be time between the events, but I kind of wish it was done in a different way. I also felt like when Houston and Ford separated, they were forced apart, there was a lot of tension in there and they weren't able to even talk. So it was a very like hard situation because they didn't get to explain to the other person, they didn't know how the other person was feeling. And then when they meet again, like however many years later, like 5 years I believe, I expected for that to be a little bit more explosive, but I thought it was kind of like lacking a little bit. I expected more from like the reuniting. But overall, I did enjoy the beginning with like the anonymous dating app and seeing them like slowly open up, saying like, you know, I would love to meet you, but that's just not how this is going to work. And the shock of meeting for the first time, seeing who the other was. I really liked the beginning. It was like the second half that I wasn't a super huge fan of, but it was still a fun read. And then the last book that I read in the month of June is for a reading vlog that will hopefully come at the end of July, but that is How to Win a Wallflower by Samara Parrish. This is a historical romance that follows Charlotte and John. John is Charlotte's older brother's best friend, and he moved to America however many years ago, but he came back to London because his brother passed on, so he needed to take care of everything that his brother left behind with the estates and all of that sort of thing. But when he comes back, he realizes that his brother was broke and kind of ran the estates down into the mud. So John is trying to figure out how he can bring the estates back up so that he can get that running and go back to America. And Charlotte, being the wonderful girl that she is, offered to help him, but she has also always had a little crush on John, so there is a little bit of tension there. And they definitely come from like different worlds, where he's very much an introvert and Charlotte is very much an extrovert, loves people, always at the parties, that sort of vibe. Yeah, so I give this book 4 stars. Overall, I really enjoyed it. I loved the connection between John and Charlotte. I love the overall story, like the situations that they were in to try to get all of the money settled for John. Overall, I just thought it was a very fun time. But more thoughts will definitely come in my reading vlog. There's also a lot going on, not just for John, but also for Charlotte. And then they kind of just, in the end, they need to realize who they are and whether their love is more important than this or that for him and her. So yeah, overall, like I said, 4 stars, did enjoy it. That is that. That is all of the 13 books that I read in the month of June. I don't usually do this, but because I don't make monthly TBR or hopeful videos, I did want to pop in and just quickly remind you guys that if you missed it, the Mending Hearts book club in the month of July will be reading Frayed by Laura Pavlov for my birthday month. It was my pick, so I'm very excited for this. And also earlier in June, I announced that I was going to be doing a read along of Birthday Girl by Penelope Douglas. So I will leave both of these announcement videos down below if you want more information on what's going on there. But that is all for me. You can like, comment, and subscribe down below if you'd like. All of my socials to follow me anywhere else are in the description, along with everything else that I mentioned. But yeah, so that's all for me. Hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!